Use this mic. There. Again, if you hold it, you get a better sound bite.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first of the MJSA Journal Live sessions. My name is Rich Higgins. I'm the publisher of MJSA Journal. Glad you could be here today. This is the first of 4 MJSA Journal Live sessions that I'll be having today. Just so you're aware, at 1 p.m. Harold Dupree will be here from Stellar. He does a column for us looking at trends and statistics, where he turns it into a roadmap to see where we're going to go forward. At 3 p.m., we're going to have a session called Behind Design, in which some of the industry's leading designers will come and really talk about how they overcome creative block, whether it's trying to come up with a design, whether it's a technical challenge. And at 4:30, we're going to do 60 ideas in 60 minutes. We're going to have 9 of the industry's experts in business and knowledge. They're going to come in and they're going to have a whirlwind round robin of ideas, 60 ideas in 60 minutes. But now this morning, you have Higher Logic, an idea generator for finding, choosing, and retaining workers. Finding workers, attracting them, keeping them is everything one of the biggest issues right now facing the jewelry industry. And we have 5 experts here who are going to help us see what can be done to solve that problem. And we do someone to start to the right. This is Kate Peterson. Kate is the president and CEO of Performance Concepts, which provides consulting services that help retailers and suppliers build their brands, develop a client base, and hire, train, and manage staff. Next to her is Matthew Anderson. Matthew's with Rio Grande. He's currently Human Resources Director there. He was formerly the Director of Manufacturing, and he holds a People Manager qualification from the Society for Human Resources Management. Next, we come to Adrianne Sanogo. Adrianne is a GIA Graduate Gemologist. She's mentored many students and jewelry professionals around the world. She serves as Education Chair of the Black and Jewelry Coalition, and she's also the DEI on the DEI Committee of the WJA New York Metro. Next, we have Lisa Garris. Lisa is the Vice President of Human Resources for the Gemological Institute of America. She has experience in organizational design, talent management, employee relations, and change management. She's also the co-executive sponsor for GIA's Inclusion and Diversity Committee, and is on the board of directors of the Black and Jewelry Coalition. And last, we come to Andrea Hill. Andrea is the founder of Hill Management Group, a consultancy that specializes in helping small to mid-sized businesses, and has 3 brands: StrategyWerx, Works Marketing, and MentorWorks. She is also the author of the How to Hire Handbook for Small Business Owners, and she's going to be leading the discussion today. And with that, Andrea, it's yours.
Thanks, Rich. Welcome to our session, and welcome to our social media audiences. It looks like we have a lot of people tuning in for this conversation today. So I'm going to get started by just asking everyone here to share what you think should be on the minds of anyone who's in a position to be recruiting or hiring right now. What should they be thinking about? In any order you like. Lisa, grab the mic. We're off to a start.
I think in today's market, it is really important to not just think about obtaining talent, but retaining talent as well. And in order to do that, you really need to be attractive to candidates. You need to think about what are they looking for. You need to be able to share what is your purpose. People today are looking for the bigger purpose. That's why we're hearing about this huge resignation, right? The great resignation, because during the pandemic, people have had an opportunity to reevaluate what's important to them. And it's no longer just about a job, it's about fulfilling a purpose. And how do you do that? So I think that's something that you really need to keep first and foremost, is to be able to share what initiatives that you have, besides just what the day-to-day duties of the job is. What is the purpose of the organization? What is the organization's commitment to inclusion and diversity? What about sustainability? These are issues that are very important to prospective candidates, and you need to be able to address those. So I would just start with that.
So start with purpose, and I'd like to point out that if you're going to start with purpose for what the employee's role is, you need to know what your purpose as an organization is. So thinking about organizational purpose right now is absolutely critical. Kate, Kate's ready?
Yeah, I'm just going to throw something out to add to that. I think it's really important to understand from the candidate's perspective, from the outside perspective, what we look like as an industry. Remember, we know the good things we do for people. We know the good things we do for miners and workers and things of that nature. We know the good things we do for our customers. We make people happy. We deal in happy things. To someone who doesn't understand our industry, they don't know any of that. We're the people who sell expensive bling to people who should be spending their money feeding the poor. Okay, you got to be able to reframe that conversation and really underscore what we do well that benefits people around the world and benefits our customers.
Good point, because there's a lot going on that's meaningful, and that should be part of the story we carry forward. Adrianne, you had a thought?
Yes, hi. I also think that, as everyone has said here, we should be thinking on a global level. Even if you're in New York, you're in New Jersey, you're Midwest, it doesn't make a difference, because most of us now have a digital presence. So your organization will be broadcast all over the world. People will search for you when they're looking for employment. They're going to look up your background, and they do want to know that you have a purpose, that you're doing well, you're serving your community in some way perhaps, or you have a cause. People are very tuned into that, and they want to be a part of it. So they're going to want to align with an organization whose values match their own. And there's a lot of awareness now on so many causes, diversity and inclusion, gender inclusion, just being fair across the board. People are looking for that, and if you cannot offer it, if you're not forward facing with that message, you as an employer will be passed over.
Hit myself. I also think there's things you can do in looking at your hiring practices, your hiring process, to make sure that there's not unnecessary waiting, there's not people waiting for things, because as soon as you've made that first call, you've started onboarding. People need to understand who you are. They need to know what you're doing for the community, for the world, all over. You need to really focus on being creative, I think, and leading in that process.
I couldn't agree more. I think that all of these things are critical, and transparency right now is absolutely essential across the board. It's not just transparency about where you get your stuff. It's transparency about your culture. We live, whether we like it or not, in glass boxes now. I've heard it called the glass box culture. Your business culture is visible. Don't kid yourself. Nothing goes on behind closed doors anymore. If you're looking to hire right now, and particularly if you're using online forums for recruiting, if you don't know what your reviews look like as an employer on those online forums, you're in serious trouble. You need to know that stuff. Again, transparency in what you're doing for the community. You can put all of this out there, but if you have one disgruntled employee who posts a review on Glassdoor about the fact that it's all garbage and you don't really do any of that stuff, you just sunk yourself. So you have to be able to manage your online reviews from employees the same way as you do manage your online reviews from your customers.
And that doesn't mean trying to keep them off of Glassdoor. That means being the company that people don't want to post a lot of negative stuff about in the first place, because you cannot fully police this anymore. Yeah, I don't think people realize, you know, in real estate, people talk about a buyer's market or a seller's market, right? We go through buyer's markets and then seller's markets, and everybody's used to the cycle. This is the first true employees market we've been in since the 70s. It's been an employer's market all these years, and we got complacent. So we're now in an employees market, and they get to pick and choose. And that's a very big difference.
And I just was thinking about a couple of the comments made here, and I would like to add, like, the online presence is really, really important. You know, making sure you do have a presence in LinkedIn, and as you said, just making sure that you do have a presence, you know, on social media. That becomes important because that's what this generation is looking at. Another thing, I know you mentioned, how are you publicizing your positions? When you post job ads, really take a look at them today. Like, do you use, like, is your language gender neutral? You'd be surprised how that can make a difference. So it's simple things that you can do that make a difference.
Just on that note, I had a client just recently had an ad kicked back by Indeed because they used the words digital native. That implied looking for an age group, and Indeed would not publish the ad.
I mean, as a old person, you know, but that's true. The digital native signals 20-year-old. And I'm sorry, a lot of us old people can use our technology, as I try not to swallow my mouth.
You know, we were talking about purpose and being upfront with that and being very visible, but also be ready to be interviewed by your applicants and have them ask those questions and be ready with that list. Take some time to really get to know, like you were saying, get to know what you're doing for the community, promote it, and be ready. We even have fact sheets that we hand people or post on our site so that people know what we're doing and why we're doing it.
You try that?
I also know that whether this is not really about age groups, it's about what we have available to us. People are online searching for ways to interview, for questions to ask the employer, as you said, so they will come back at you. And depending on how savvy that particular person is, be ready to answer these questions. What have you done for your community? What are your plans? What's the culture like in your interview? Why did the last person leave the job? What can you offer me? Salary negotiations. These people are ready. And as you said, it is an employee market right now. So, and then let's talk about retention, because they will leave. If the culture is not right, if the feeling, the vibe isn't right, people will leave you. And people did get very savvy during the last 2 years. Everything has been accelerated digitally. People developed a lot of skills. They took classes, so they know what they have to offer. And you have to be ready as an employer to meet that and exceed their expectations in order to retain them.
I think there's a couple of things that kind of that are becoming stumbling blocks for small businesses right now, across all sectors. And the biggest one that I see is people are so worried about what they can't do for employees that they're forgetting about what they can do. They're losing sight of their own agility and versatility and the things that you can do as a small business for an employee that a large company can't do. So instead of worrying about the fact that In-N-Out Burger has a sign up for $24 an hour in Sausalito, you know, if you're in that market, you're going to be struggling if you're trying to get people and you think you have to compete with that. But what they don't, you know, as with most things, anything that looks too good to be true usually is, and the requirements that go along with that kind of stuff. You know, you get 5 hours a week at that rate, and then we're going to hire a bunch of other people. You know, they don't have a lot of flexibility. There are quotas. If you're going to get paid $24 an hour, I expect you to push 200 burgers out for that $24. You know, and if you don't, you're out of here. You know, and you have things to offer that businesses that are necessarily paying more can't offer. So think about what you can do and be creative. I mean, we can do a lot of crazy things. I have a retail client who has, I think, 6 young or youngish, say 40 and under women working in the store, along with a bunch of men and you know, all age groups and a variety of diversity in the group. But what she's done, one of the things that she did was convert the top floor of their building to a playroom. And instead of having women or men, for that matter, anyone who has little kids who have to leave or can't come in or whatever for school days off and stuff, she just hires a sitter that plays with kids in this well-equipped playroom. I mean, that's the kind of thing you can do as a small business that bigger companies really don't or can't.
Go ahead, Matthew.
No, I was just going to say, along with that, I think there's also the opportunity to develop people, to teach people about our industry, to teach them about your business, and really think about how can you work together and develop a partnership for their development and get them into, if they're doing a certain task, what other tasks would they be interested in? What are aspects of the business? And a lot of times you don't get that in some of these other markets that we're competing with.
Well, and that's kind of what I was thinking when Kate was talking to Matthew. In smaller businesses, it's tempting to think we don't have a management ladder for people to climb. They're never going to be the owner. I would like small businesses to think about it as a knowledge ladder. Not everybody wants to be a manager. Not everybody should be a manager. Anyone who's ever taken their best salesperson and turned them into sales manager only to see them fail spectacularly knows that not all skills translate to management, but workers really love the idea of developing themselves, of finding something new and interesting and creative, of being stretched personally. And that is something that small businesses can offer, because having a great jack of all trades in a small office is a powerful benefit to the business and really can give people motivation to invest in that job and stick around. So think about knowledge ladders and professional development.
If you're in retail, that's a little bit of a struggle, because the entire retail industry has been warped ever since I've been part of it, and that's been a good awful long time, where you're kind of bred to think that the ladder up is to become a manager. And realistically, that's like saying you are the best carpenter I've ever seen, so here you go, here's your promotion, you're a plumber now. It doesn't make any sense. It makes absolutely no sense. They're completely different skill sets and completely different thought processes. So you have to kind of undo that. And part of the way you undo that is to create those knowledge ladders and those paths for people within your organization that make them feel valued for who they are and what they do best. I would rather have you be the best salesperson that ever walked the planet than to have you struggle to do something you're not wired to do. And I can help you do that.
So I agree 100%, and I would add to that the way you do that is you communicate. Once you've hired them, you have to communicate. You have to, moving away from that annual appraisal where you only talk to your employee at the end of the year and then it's like a summary of what they've done. You have regular check-ins to see how they're doing. People today don't want a manager, they want a coach. You want to find out what their career aspirations are and share with them what the career path is. And like you said, it's building a tool belt. It's not necessarily moving up and showing them. They may not know that there's other avenues besides just management. They may not realize that there's a career path for someone who's technical and doesn't really have the ability, the skill, interest, or desire to manage people. Sharing what that is, what other skills they can learn, and as you said, offering them opportunities to develop themselves in those areas. Those are really important, and staff, employees look for that today.
Yeah, you have to make those connections for people too, right? You have to say, hey, I think it would be great if you worked with so-and-so, and let's get you two together and give you some time to have those conversations.
Another common hiring mistake that people tend to make is if you lose someone or someone leaves, you think you have to go hire the same skills, the same kind of person to do the same job. When in reality, if no one on your team has grown in the amount of time that person was there, or you don't know how they've grown, you're missing something. The smart thing to do is to reassess your assets before you go and try to hire somebody new, because you may not need what you think you need. Someone can already pick up that ball. You may need somebody else entirely.
If you look in MJSA Journal, we've talked recently about the skill matrix in some of our articles. Keep that skill matrix alive and well. And if you haven't seen it, then grab your MJSA journal and look. Maybe Rich will know what the most recent, or Shauna, they're both back there, issue that we had it in. But if you're maintaining a skill matrix of all your employees and what they're good at and where they're tracking, then when that person leaves, you can see where there's new opportunity that maybe didn't exist when you hired that person or when they started developing. So you're always evolving your employment environment by monitoring the skill and capability space.
Yeah, Andrea introduced that skill matrix to me long time ago.
Go ahead, date me.
Yeah, a while back. And we also use it for that development. You know, if you're noticing that you've got someone that's really showing a lot of initiative and they're looking to do something, look at those gaps in that skill matrix and say, hey, is this something that interests you? You could be the key person for this skill. How can we work together to make that happen?
That's another point. It used to be if we wanted to send somebody off for training, we had to pay for airfare and we had to pay for them to go to a conference, and conferences were expensive. Or today, well, first of all, it's always been important that you invest in your employees' knowledge and skill and learning. It was important when it was expensive. Now it's not so expensive. And you can get your employees really excited by making available to them a digital conference, an online class, an hour every week that they get to just work on that class while they're being paid, or 2 or 3. Like investing in their education and letting them become the expert at something internally that they can train the others to, that is also a powerful way to keep your stars happy and create new stars.
Oh, that's my area. I was about to. I'm so glad you said that. Investing in education right now does not have to be expensive at all. In fact, there are a lot of complementary courses that organizations and colleges, for that matter, trade schools are offering for little or no cost. And the person gets to stay local. They don't have to travel, incurring that big expense of traveling. And they feel empowered that they are creating, either learning or adding to a skill set they already have, or learning something completely new that serves your company and also boosts their purpose in your organization. So I encourage people who are in a position to offer education to really consider it. It's a very good investment in your employees, and typically it counts as a business expense. So it costs you on the front end, but you also get to recoup that cost. And it's a very, very powerful tool. Thank you for mentioning that.
And the only thing I would add also is, there's also quick micro learnings. Those are quick wins where, you can take a 15-minute, a 10-minute course on something, because sometimes time is a concern. It's a really busy day. But I've done micro learnings on managing remote and hybrid teams. Like they're there and they're good, and you get knowledge, and then it doesn't take up a lot of time, so that's also an option.
And along that same line, be aware of the fact, again, particularly for those who have smaller operations, be aware of the fact that training and education today is not what it was 20 years ago, okay? With the people that we're dealing with today, particularly with younger people coming into the market, again, I'm going to use that terrible phrase, digital native. I mean, these are folks who grew up with a device in their hands in many cases. Sitting them down in your back room with a book and saying, read this and let me know when you're done, is completely counterproductive. They're going to learn nothing. That doesn't count anymore, okay? My youngest son is 25, and he's been out of college for 4 years now. And his last 2 years of college, so we're talking 7 years ago, I was paying $800 for 3 flash drives and 5 links instead of textbooks. Okay, so we have to be aware of the fact that it's not what it used to be. So look for ways that are engaging. Don't invest your money in something that's not going to give them a learning experience that's going to be productive for you.
And I want to add one more thing to the education piece. Celebrate the wins, the accomplishments. When someone finishes a course of study or some type of accomplishment, there are small ways that don't have to cost a lot of money that you can celebrate. People love to be celebrated and acknowledged that they've done a good job or achieved something. I think it's important to do that, no matter the size of your organization, and the employees really thrive on that.
Yeah, I always use the term, and I get it from, 1-minute manager, but it's great to catch people doing something right. So often we focus in on areas where people need to improve, but make it a habit to focus on catching them doing something right.
That's a really good point.
Exactly. We used to call it manage strengths and manage around weaknesses. Okay, if you're going to staff correctly, look for what people do remarkably well, and if you take the same amount of energy that you put in to making someone who's kind of weak in something better, you take that same amount of energy and put it into something they're good at, you could make them outstanding, and then find somebody else to do the other part. You know, it's a different way of looking at it.
You adding something?
Just one last thing is, I also think there's opportunities for newer folks or folks that are looking for that development to work as groups, because as they build community and success together as a group. So the one-off learning is great, but if you can get to where we had a few people on the team that went and got their yellow belt certification in lean. And since then, now anybody coming onto that team, that's an expectation that team has set
Right.
for their group. Is when you come to our team, we'll get you through like your first 30 days, then we're going to sit you down and get you yellow belt certified so that you can share with that team. And it's become actually one of our strongest manufacturing teams, because everybody in there has learned to see, and it's a point of pride. They have in their work area, they have a wall. It's probably the brightest, nicest wall in their area with all of their certificates up on the wall.
Well, and that reminds me of something else. There's one place where books do work, and that's when you get teams to read them together. Ted Dudak at Riva Precision Manufacturing has his management group read a management book together, and then they discuss it, and he reads it with them. So it becomes a learning book club, and they take company time to do it, and they invest in each other's understanding of the material. And that's one other thing is he's learning with his team. If we're promoting knowledge building within the organization, and we as business owners are not also deeply engaged in our own learning, then we're not teaching them what we want them to do. So, and it's good for us besides, but so invest in your own learning in a very public way, learn with your employees, but a book can work when the book's in a group.
And when it's available on an iPad or as a listening.
For those who spend all their time in their cars,
There you go.
plenty, yeah.
Just to kind of throw a monkey wrench in the machinery here, I think one of the things that everybody should really kind of just pay a little bit of attention to is the simple fact that because it's difficult to hire right now, that doesn't mean that you should hang on to dead weight. True. Okay, this is a big deal. We're seeing a lot of people that are desperately hanging on to people that should have been gone a long time ago because they're terrified of not being able to find somebody else. What you're missing in that process is that the person that you're keeping could be hampering your productivity far more than being rid of them would help your productivity. So don't hang on to dead weight just because you're afraid of what might not be out there.
But I think you're going to say the same thing.
But in a transparent business, that culture, and if you have someone who is bringing down the morale or the spirit of what that team or the company is doing, it has huge effects. You think, I need to get this work done. I promise, and over 30 years of being in some kind of management, every time I've let that person go, it's been better. There's nothing that, I know you can be afraid of making that leap, but it's always hard.
Because unproductive people are culture killers. The rest of your employees would rather work a little harder to compensate for the unproductive person being gone than to do their work for them while they're there. So,
And getting paid.
absolutely, and getting paid for everybody else doing their work for them. So don't let negative, unproductive people kill your culture. But that reminds me of something else, kind of on the flip side. Lisa, I've noticed when I talk to you, when we talk about diversity, inclusion, equity, of the DEI acronym, you always put inclusion first. And I've really been thinking about that since I noticed you do that. So tell us why you do that.
I do that, and it's intentionally because you can focus really hard on trying to ensure that you have a diverse organization. But if people don't feel that they belong, it's for nothing. So I think that is the focus, is making sure everyone feels they belong. And that's the inclusion part of it. So I always say inclusion and diversity. I say it in that order. The other thing that I was thinking as everyone was talking, it's about, you know, how do you find talent in this market that is so difficult, and sometimes looking outside of the normal channels where you go. It's to us, because we're in the industry now. It's like, why wouldn't somebody want to work here? Like, we don't even think about that. But there's so many that don't even know that they have an opportunity, that this is an industry that they can work in, and it's branching outside of the normal channels to make people, maybe underrepresented communities, aware of the fact that these opportunities exist. And there are careers that exist in human resources, in IT technology. There's all different types of careers that exist in this industry. And you've got to get creative to make sure that you expand the audience who you're offering these opportunities to.
I want to come back to that in a second, because I'm thinking of something Adrianne said to me too about the industry, its appeal. But I want to go back to this inclusion piece for a minute before we run down that track. What should we be thinking about when we work on our organization becoming more inclusive? I mean, I just thought of two, you know, one thing is a more diverse working group, but it's also when people come into the industry. I came into the industry after having run 3 companies in other industries, and I was overwhelmed at the number of acronyms that I had to learn and how much new knowledge I had to pick up just to run a company, which I thought I was already pretty good at, right? So what do we have to do to help people feel included, whether we're bringing them in from outside the industry or just bringing them into a team that doesn't necessarily look like them?
One thing I was just going to say is assign them a buddy. You know, someone within the organization that is not their manager, that's someone that can kind of show them the ropes, is helpful in that. We have at GIA, we do have an inclusion and diversity committee, and we make sure that we look at different areas that may be of interest to employees. We make sure that we communicate with all of our employees on a regular basis on different national, I won't say they're not necessarily holidays, but they're significant days of importance. We'll send out communications about that. We started a volunteer committee, and we actually give staff 8 hours volunteer time that they can use paid to try to bring groups of people together. They can volunteer on their own, or they can volunteer as a team. It's nothing like working together with your teammate outside of work for some good organization, to do good that brings people together. But it's really just having a way to listen to what's important to people, and making sure that we hear everyone, and everyone feels that they have a voice. So that's one way to do it. And again, it seems like a little thing, but I mentioned it before. Look at the language we use. Language is so powerful. How are we wording things? And make sure that it's, you know, not just gender neutral, but just neutral of making anyone feel excluded.
I think the idea of offering, back to the idea of getting involved with the community and being part of the community, number one, for a small business, particularly a small local business, that is a fabulous way to attract good people. Being a part of the community, be out there, be the person that everybody wants to work for. How cool is that? I want to work for that cool lady that runs the jewelry store. Because you know what? Most young people in a small community, in particular, newer, I say young, I mean newer people coming into the workforce, what they don't know is who lives behind that door of that jewelry store because they've never been in there. They think it's the cranky old guy that runs the jewelry store. You know, they don't know because they've never been in there. So get out there, be a part of the community. And the point of paying people to do community-related activities is brilliant. I don't care how small you are, you can afford to pay someone 8 hours a month to devote to community service. Because, by the way, that's also the least expensive marketing you're ever going to get. there's a lot of ways to look at that, and we have a lot of our retailers doing that now, making sure that that's part of their benefit offering. That also makes you very attractive to people coming in because they get to help choose how involved you are and how engaged you are in the community.
And it goes back to our kicking off point for this conversation today, which was, what are your values? If one of your values in your business is community involvement, then living your values with your employees out there in the community is a powerful way to attach what really happens in your business with the values you state on your website, because you should be stating them on your website.
Yeah, we, on our recruitment cards that we hand out, so say I meet somebody that I think was amazing at whatever job they were doing, and I experienced that, I may hand them a card that has, hey, come see us at RioGrandeCareers.com, but also on the flip side of that card are our 15 principles. So they know what we stand for and also where to go.
Well, and years ago at Rio, we also had our value statement on them, that we serve jewelers, we make jewelers life. Every person in the organization, I can still state it today, and I've been gone almost 15 years, what our value statement was. We could all say it by heart. It was powerful. So we were talking about, so values, I went off on that track, inclusion, so do everything you can to make sure that anybody coming into your organization feels welcome and a part of your organization. And that may mean coaching your other employees around it. It means knowing what they're doing. It means being out there and observing. And if somebody's always off by themselves or doesn't look happy, it's your job to find out why. We're small businesses. We can't just punt it off to HR and ask someone to check in. We need to go in and say, hey, how's it going? Are you feeling included? That's an okay question to ask. It's how you get to the bottom of things if it's missing.
I mean, one of the things that I kind of lost the train of thought about that, the whole inclusion thing, that's really important. Think about what you liked about somebody when you hired them. You bring somebody in. We do this all the time. We hire somebody because they have all these great strengths and they can talk to people and they're engaging and they know stuff. They have community ties. They know things. And then we spend the whole first 30 days training it right out of them and making them afraid of everything that we do. Okay, so think back to what you like about them. I think, one of my favorite Steve Jobs quotes, we don't hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can help tell us what to do. Okay, and that's what we need to do. When you hire somebody that comes from a different cultural background, a different economic background, we're hiring people that are different from us. I want to know what they know. I want them to bring it to me. I don't want to make them like us. And we have a habit of doing that, even if it's unconsciously. We have a habit. So we have to kind of get past that and say, I hired you because I want who you are and what you have as part of my business.
And that made me think of something when you said unconsciously. I don't think it's a bad idea to go through some sort of unconscious bias training because we don't even realize what our biases are unconsciously. I would highly recommend it.
To your point, is training not only making sure that people feel included, but training everybody else how to make it inclusive. Understanding what that is, knowing unconscious bias, all that kind of stuff.
I was raised in an incredibly culturally diverse family, and I've still found unconscious bias training repeatedly throughout my life to be incredibly powerful because they are so ingrained in all of us, no matter what background we come from. So knowing what we might be doing unconsciously, encouraging our employees to make that training available to them. It's amazing how many people don't want to exclude another person and don't even realize they're doing it.
I just want to add one thing. Some of these conversations are uncomfortable. We all know that. But there's tools that we can use if you're not comfortable with asking directly your employees what makes them uncomfortable or what makes them feel excluded. You can use polls, and you can use polls that are confidential, or that you don't have to include your name. And those are free on some sites. You can get Doodle polls or create a poll, SurveyMonkey, and something like that, and make it inviting for them to do it. You might even have to incentivize it with a gift card. People will fill out a poll for a gift card in a minute. So, think of creative ways to get that information and then act on it. Because don't just collect the information, act on that information and start making changes. If you feel more comfortable having the one-on-one or group meetings about that, you can do it that way also. But I would advise maybe calling in a professional to be a moderator or a mediator in that particular type of environment.
Yeah, make it safe for people to talk about.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So Adrianne, you said something to me one time when we were talking, and I have copied you over and over, but I credit you every time, okay? I say, Adrianne Sanogo says, but I can't stop using it. You described the jewelry industry as a STEM career.
Absolutely. When I pitch to people, when I want to go into schools and organizations and talk about the careers in this industry, in my own particular, I'm a gemologist, I'm a scientist, and a lot of gemologists don't view themselves that way for what, I don't know the reason why, but I certainly do. And that is what gets me in these spaces, because when I say it's a STEM career, the people are like, oh, wow, tell me how. And when I'm able to explain that to them, they get excited about it, because right now, we are moving in that direction. I'm not moving in that direction. We're in STEM, and the pandemic actually magnified that and accelerated everything that's digital or everything that's scientific or everything that is just a big focus on that right now. So not just gemologists are scientists, but you have engineering, designing a piece of jewelry sitting at a bench, that's engineering. If your engineering is not flawless, that piece of jewelry will not perform, it will fall apart. Mathematics, diamond math. People don't even know there's a diamond math. There is a diamond math. If you're cutting diamonds, you have to use the diamond math. Technology, all the machinery that is involved in creating jewelry, and scientists, gemologists, people who work with stones, people who work with diamonds or whatever. These are STEM careers, and then you can go even further and say it's a STEAM career, because you have the artistry of designing jewelry, designing equipment, which is engineering and it's art. Cutting diamonds is art. It's so many things. I could go on and on. So I introduce it that way every time, and that is what gets people's interest, because our industry is very mysterious. I don't know if that's by design. People don't know. People think that you pull gems out of the ground, they're already polished and cut. You pull jewelry just out of somewhere, I don't know, it's already done. People have no idea of how many hands touch it, how many, the supply chain, the value chain. No one knows anything. And when I'm able to go in and talk to these kids, the teachers all come and join the conversation because they have questions. They're like, wow, I had no idea. So you could sell that to your employees, whatever your field is in this industry. You can maybe start reframing it and saying, listen, this is a STEM career. And then you're going to pick up some interest of a kid not a kid, but an employee, a future employee who said, I'm really good with engineering, I'm really good with my hands. But if you use the word STEM, that acronym, that perks up people's interest, and they're like, wow, okay, I'm going to be in a STEM career, because this is a STEM industry. It's a luxury industry, but it's also a STEM industry.
And I add to that the metallurgy, because I'm not a gemologist like Adrianne, but for any of us who've ever tried to get someone to approach their casting more scientifically, if we could get people to really look at the metallurgy of their work and not just the way they thought it should be done. But metallurgy is a science as well, as anyone who's ever listened to a paper at Santa Fe Symposium can tell you.
And if you're sitting out there thinking, yeah, but I need salespeople, psychology.
Absolutely.
They need to learn things like how to listen, how to communicate effectively. These are all sciences in some way or another. And it's not misrepresenting to say, listen, the job here is as much about being effective at listening and communicating and understanding what someone is telling you as it is about closing a sale. That there's more to it than just being, quote, just a salesperson.
I completely agree that the top business schools in the world teach sales. It is psychology. It is about connecting with humans and creating a desire and letting them know that these are products that sometimes they need. But, just explaining to them why it's desirable. Tapping into that, into each human and saying, wow, this will make me feel good, because let's just face it, jewelry is something that makes us feel good. It creates memories. It's usually commemorative or something attached to a feeling. So when you tap into the psychology of that, and I'm glad you brought that up, that is another part of the science. The salesperson is a scientist to some point. If they're good, they're using science to sell, believe me.
my grandson-in-law is a young 20-something, right? And he chose as a trade HVAC. And one of the reasons he chose it as a trade was because the company that was hiring locally promised not only good wages for their career, but also a lot of training. He's just finished his first year at that job, and they sent him off to Boston for a 5-day conference on communications and selling skills. That's how they're investing in him, but they recognize if he's going to be talking to people every day, he should be trained in that skill. And that's how people are investing in their employees right now. And he is dedicated. He said, I want to open my own, HVAC company someday, but not until I've paid them back for everything they're already investing in me. That's the way he thinks about it.
And again, I'm going to tag onto that because this is pretty important. If the fear is, if I invest in my employees and they're that driven, they're going to leave, guess what? They're going to leave. And it's okay. Because your job is to get what you can, the best you can from them while you have them. Learn from them. I mean, that's really what it's all about. There was some years ago, the chair of one of the larger jewelry chains, and I was the vice president of training for one of their competing jewelry chains at the time. And he kind of got in my face. He was about to acquire the company I worked for. And he kind of got in my face and said, I don't believe in training. And I stopped myself before I said, yes, sir, that's obvious. But I just didn't.
You did?
I'm
impressed.
I did, but it didn't last long because he said, what happens if I train them and I leave? And that's when I couldn't stop myself and said, sir, the issue is you don't train them and they stay. That was the real problem. And that's the thing. You can't be afraid that you're going to invest in somebody and they're going to leave you someday, because this is the world we live in. Yep, they're not going to stay 100 years. It doesn't happen that way anymore. But you can still learn so much from somebody you have for a short period of time, provided you're willing to invest in them to get that back out.
I just want to also emphasize on that. People I don't care what kind of relationship it is, employer, employee, personal relationships, teachers and students. People feel valued when you invest in them. And it doesn't have to be money, it could be time, it could be access, it could be opportunities. When you show that level of interest in a person, it does something to them. It resonates with them and they feel valued and they're going to perform better because you have invested and they know that you care. And it also, on the other end of that helps your company because you're going to get a better performance, you're going to get a better product, people are going to be happy, and that your product, whatever your product is going to reflect that.
So true.
Along with that, I really encourage when people have come to me or we see potential in someone, we really try to make sure that they're taking ownership of that training path as well. Because I want them to not be coming to me and me being a bottleneck in their development. I'm giving them that as a project. This is where you want to go. These are the skills you want to do. Let's lay out a project and you take ownership of that learning and development path. And I'll help you every way I can. I'll advocate for you, but really giving that ownership of it as well. So you're not trying to manage 10 different people's development paths. Have them take some ownership of it.
Well, and that's, by the way, I want to follow up on that with you for just a second, Matthew, but there's a microphone there because I was supposed to be inviting you to bring your questions up or your own successes or suggestions up, like, I don't know, an hour ago, but these guys are so interesting, I forgot to do it. So if you have anything to share that has worked for you, or if you have any questions for this incredible panel, please just step up to the microphone. Matthew, you were saying something when we first started, because you haven't been in the HR at Rio that long, and you kind of mentioned it. You were more in manufacturing, not in HR. And I pointed out to you, you've been an incredible coach of teams for 25 years?
Yeah.
Now I'm dating him. That's what you're referring to now, isn't it? Because you said, I don't do manufacturing.
Yeah, I don't do the work. I take care of the people doing the work. That's really my focus. I'm not casting anymore. I'm not stamping and forming things. I'm not pulling orders. All those things that we do at the company. My job every day is to make sure that the people doing the work and taken care of, we are finding out, who's upset or what conflict we need to resolve, or someone maybe not included, and really giving them a voice is really what I need to be spending my time doing.
And that's one of the firm instructions we have for our client business owners. You must only do what only you can do. I'm going to say that one more time. You must only do what only you can do. Because if you're doing that, you're doing exactly what Matthew said. You are creating the environment in which the people that work with you are able to do what they do best. If you spend way too much of your time trying to do what everybody else should be doing, number one, you're wasting payroll, and number two, you're not effective as a leader. And that goes to my next point, which is, if you want good people, you have got to be a good leader. Good people will not tolerate weak leaders or poor leaders. That's all there is to it. And if you've had a problem with losing people over and over again in the past, it's time to step back a little and put the mirror up and say, okay, what do I need to be doing differently? It's not that people have just turned crummy all of a sudden and nobody wants to work. It's, what am I doing that I should be doing differently to be more effective for the people I am paying to do work for me?
Yep. And when we were talking before about if you've got a weak employee and you're terrified of losing them because you're afraid you won't be able to replace them, that is doubly, triply, quadruply true for a bad manager. You may be afraid of losing a bad manager because they know where everything is and they know how to do everything. But a bad manager will kill your business faster than any other market force. So get the bad manager out of there and get somebody in there that can cultivate a culture and a value system and the kind of, environment that we've been talking about here. Without that person in place, or with the opposite in place, you can't recruit, you can't hire.
With regard to the whole idea of your culture, it's not enough just to know what your culture is and to create a good culture. You got to be able to sell it. Listen, there's not a single person that I know of in our industry, regardless of what sector you're in the industry, who doesn't do a really, really good job of convincing people on the other side of whatever that counter is why they should do business with you. But the truth is, if I'll use retailers as an example, if you're a retailer and you are great at convincing the consumer about why the smartest consumers in your market should buy from you, you better be that good at convincing people why the best and brightest employees in your market should want to work for you. It's no different. You have to have a selling proposition that you can deliver in a way that makes sense to people.
Well, it is different because when the consumer walks out of the store with their package and they're happy, they might still be fooled. But
there you go.
You can't, when people work in your business, they know the real experience of being in your business. They're going to feel it from minute one. So that's why it's so important to create that environment. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. It's good for us. It feels better to work in an environment where people are happy and included and celebrated for what they bring that you need.
There have been many studies done that have over and over, but it's a very hot topic right now, that diversity is good for business. It's good for business. Bringing in new ideas or just having new ideas, if you're not already diverse, bringing in different ideas will expand what you're capable of doing, because you'll have input from someplace that you've never thought about. It will also expand your customer base, whatever your product is. So, and diversity doesn't just have to be color or race related. It could be diverse in all kinds of areas. So think about that. Again, the survey, you can do a survey to get ideas from your employees, or maybe have an idea day or idea, once a month or something like that. Get them involved, get them, invested in their success, and that will also translate to the success of your company, whatever it is.
And I think
one of the things, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, what sums it all up, what we're hearing is that your people are your gyms. And I always say that they are the gyms of the organization. And without them, you don't have an organization, and it's really just making sure that you treat them in that way.
If I can just throw out something very practical for if anyone's out there wondering about some very practical things with regard to hiring people today, we have a lot of great ideas here. But from a very practical standpoint, if you're wondering what it takes to hire somebody, a capable person in your market, in a particular field or in a particular job, go to those job boards and know your way around them. Know your way around Indeed, know your way around ZipRecruiter. You can go to Indeed and find out what people are paying in your market for salespeople, what their benefits package looks like. What are they paying in your market for a bench jeweler? What does the benefits package look like? You need to know what it takes to be competitive, and more importantly, know how you can compete above and beyond whatever's on that list. What's missing from that list? What can you offer that they can't? You have to be very pragmatic about that if you hope to really engender yourself, or engender the people that really want to be part of your organization.
Well, and pay attention to what you're saying about what it's like to work there, not just the tasks of the job. That's all trainable. People expect they're going to do tasks. But what it means to work in your organization, what the purpose of the organization is, what the purpose of that job is, not just its tasks. That's also a big part of it. And if you're thinking it's difficult to offer benefits as a small company, I know I just talked to a benefits, because we have less than 20 people in our organization, talked to a benefits consultant recently that showed me incredibly creative ways to offer full benefits package, all the health insurance, all the 401k, the life insurance, the ABD, all of it. Very affordable for a small business. So there are new plans out there. If you haven't looked at them recently, be prepared to offer competitive benefits too, because they're affordable, much more affordable than you might think.
And I want to also mention benefits can also mean perks. You know, you can get creative with it, or you can hire someone. Not that expensive to create something. Again, here's where a survey might help with your existing employees. People like maybe an extra day off sometime, or working half day on Fridays in the summer. People appreciate these kinds of perks working with your company. You know, they're actually expecting them now. There's all kinds of perks. So maybe flavored coffee. I mean, you'd be surprised at some of the things that people really appreciate, or popcorn on Tuesdays. I mean, you can get really, really creative. Also look at packages, maybe Netflix or something. I don't know, you can get like a group package. It doesn't have to be expensive, but people are expecting it and they like it. They really, really like it.
I have one retailer that actually, part of their benefits package is lunch is paid for every day, and you order from a menu. They choose, it's a restaurant a day, and a local restaurant that delivers. Everybody chooses from that menu. Comes out to about $3,500 a year per employee, but that's $3,500 a year for 5-day work week for full-time people. In the big scheme of things, that's an inexpensive way to set yourself apart from everybody else, just because you care and you do something that is interesting to them.
And it's a business expense.
There you go, there is that. Yeah.
Hey Matthew, does Rio still do ice cream quarterly from the?
Absolutely, we do. But going back to some of the other things that we do in the perks that we've given away at work, like a year to master class, or Audible subscriptions. For people maybe like you that like to listen to a book rather than reading. Things like that. So we're investing in those ways too, and it's really, when you look in the big scheme of things, of someone who is engaged and you want to keep them engaged, or someone you see that has that potential, invest in that a little bit, and it pays off. It's paid off every time.
Yeah, perks can be a great way to go. Good point. All right, it's almost time to wrap up. So I started off asking each of you to share something you think people should be thinking about as they go to hire and recruit people. Now I'd like to ask each of you to close with what is one thought that we talked about and you want to reinforce, or something we didn't say that you want each of our audience members to leave this session. I could play the Jeopardy music. No, Matthew's ready.
I'm ready. Something I'm realizing, and maybe it is because I'm new to the HR field, but know a lot of people within the industry, is really the importance of networking and getting to know people in those recruiting, HR, consulting areas, and really starting those conversations, because I learned a ton in this hour, and I hadn't thought of what I could be investing in just talking to more people.
It's beautiful. Again, on that line of thought, I always say that people are our gems, and like gems, they're multifaceted. And that's why it's really important to take the time to get to know them, to understand them, to recognize that everyone is different and unique, but they all have something to offer. The inclusion plays a big part in that, making sure people feel that they belong, and just listening. I would really just end on ensuring that you make time, and I just say to connect with your team, to just chat with them informally and learn what motivates them. What motivates me, it may not be what motivates you, or what motivates them. What makes them, when they wake up in the morning, say, I am looking forward to coming to work. Get to know them. And you, as a result of that, will benefit and grow so much.
I'm going to channel my inner Yoda here for a minute and say, rather than say, try not, do or do not. There is no try, okay? It's scary out there, no question, with regard to hiring and people and what we have and what's available and what people are paying and all of that. This is probably the most terrified I've seen a lot of business owners right now with regard to people. Don't look at this as something to be afraid of, and don't look at this as something like you're going to put your toe in the water. If you have people needs, you have got to go after it. Okay? Don't think about, well, maybe I should wait and see, or maybe this or no. Do what you need to do. Okay? If you have people who are dead weight, who are dragging your organization down, make them go away in a very nice way so they don't write a bad review, and then go hire new ones, okay? They are out there, but you have to be innovative, you have to be creative in what you can package and what you can offer, and most importantly, you have got to be able to sell yourself as the smart place for the best people to work.
And I'd just like to emphasize putting thought and intention in your hiring, and then treat it like a relationship. You want to hire someone, and you also want to treat them well, invest in them, and retain them for as long as you can. And when it's time for them to go, if they want to go on their own, let them free, because sometimes you get them back. If you've been a good place to work, if they've enjoyed that experience, they will come back to you with their experience and then make your business even better. But invest in your people, because just like your equipment and all of the resources that you have that are valuable, people are the most valuable resources that you have. And when you invest in them and you treat them well, everything else will be very, very well as a result of that.
And I guess I'd like to wrap all that up by saying, when you choose to, at the point where you chose to run or own a business, you chose to stop being the technician and to be the leader. And the work of leadership never stops, leadership development, the work of becoming a leader. It's the work of looking at yourself and dealing with your crap so that you can do a better job for the people who you've hired to follow you. And that is also a critical part of recruiting and hiring, to do the hard work of being the leader that your people deserve you to be. So that's the thought I'd like you to leave with. Well, I want to thank Kate and Matthew and Adrianne and Lisa for being such an amazing panel. I could talk with them all day. So thank you. And thank all of you for hanging out with us, and for our social media audiences for hanging out with us. And I hope you have a great MJSA Expo. I know I'm excited, and I hope you are too. So take care, everyone.